What's up, guys? It is Will here, back again, and today we're here to do something very important. Some might even say super duper important. The terminology could change depending upon who you ask, but we're going to go over 5 purchasing tips for beginner hot toy collectors. But before I get started, make sure to like the video down below, and of course subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell for updates, for reviews, live streams, everything else I post on the channel, hot toys related and 1/6 collecting. It will be made available to you, but make sure to be notified when it does. That said, let's jump right into it. So I've been thinking about this video for a while now, and one of the things that I've really been wanting to do is reach new collectors and help them sort of ease their way and transition into the community. And specifically as it relates to purchasing decisions, that's really one thing that I really want to touch on today. I think that's one of the most daunting things when you're trying to get into hot toys collecting. You're trying to figure out, how do I actually buy these damn things? Where do I go? Who do I buy from? Who don't I buy from? How much do they cost? So many factors get into this whole equation. And I think it's really important for us to break it down today by saying, here's 5 tips that'll help you sort of get started in your purchasing decisions. And for number 1, the first piece of advice I'm going to give to new hot toys collectors is truly do not pre-order something until you're absolutely certain that you want it. This advice could change depending upon the day, month, year, hour, minute, second, because for the longest time, for those who have been in hot toys collecting for a while, we were pretty much all on board the no-post strategy. There was plentiful stock available. Everyone had it for discounts. It was actually de-incentivizing the buyer to pre-order, because if you did, you were paying retail price, often way more than you would need to pay, because the item was being made in such plentiful supply that it was being discounted 30, 40, 50% more often than not. So if you pre-ordered, you were a sucker basically, because you paid way more just to get it faster when other people got it for discounts significantly over time. So that is now changing. Sideshow Collectibles and Hot Toys are adapting to the market. And if you're not familiar, Sideshow Collectibles, essentially they distribute Hot Toys to European and US based collectors. So Hot Toys and Sideshow are adapting. They're putting less figures in the batches, less in stock, so forth, trying to incentivize pre-orders, at least trying to get people a little bit FOMO. But I don't want you to fall for it, because there are so many figures out there, so many great Hot Toys figures that you can buy. There's always going to be another version of most characters. Think of The Mandalorian. There's been 3 seasons thus far, and as of me recording this video, we have, I think, 3 different Mandalorian figures, if not more. There will be another one from season 3 on the way. There will always be another version of the character you want. Of course, sometimes you miss out on the iconic outfit, but that's a decision you're going to have to really, truly think about before you hit that PO button. Most pre-orders are not timed. Even if they are, they give you about a week to decide. That generally is enough time to make a pretty informed decision about whether you want the figure or not. There's also a ton of variety out there. There's a million different characters being made. There's a lot of different IPs, primarily Marvel, Star Wars, and DC, but there are some other IPs being made, of course, by other companies that you might want to spend your money on too. Maybe you're collecting things other than Hot Toys. There are a lot of factors that factor into your decision to pre-order a Hot Toy, and you're paying an NRD. Generally speaking, when you pre-order a figure from Sideshow Collectibles, you pay a 10% NRD. I get my Hot Toys from Comic Concepts. If you pre-order from them, you're paying a 20% NRD. So more often than not, unless the figure gets delayed, Sideshow Collectibles is willing to generally refund you the NRD if that is the case. Sites like Comic Concepts generally don't do that. So it's something that you really need to factor into your purchasing decision, because if you change your mind later, if space changes or you just fall out of love with the character, maybe the next season of the show is ass and you just don't want that character anymore, now you're stuck with an NRD that you're probably going to eat more often than not. That's something that you really have to think about. You got to think about your space, how much you really love this character, and how important that character is long-term to your collection. Again, priorities change, interests change, offerings change, technology changes. There's so many factors that can influence a purchasing decision. So I really want you to be ultra confident that you feel good about that pre-order that is an essential one for you, especially starting out. I've made this mistake many times in my own collecting journey. I've pre-ordered things or bought things that I was kind of unsure about, but maybe I FOMO'd here and there. I learned from that. I ate NRDs. I maybe sold the figure for a loss. Over time, that starts to wear on you, and you say, okay, I'm probably not going to do that thing repeatedly again, because I know what the consequence of that action is. So trying to spare you that in the long run just by not pre-ordering things that essentially you're not absolutely certain about, at least 90 to 95% certain. So the second tip is to actually start by collecting tier 1 and tier 2 characters exclusively. So if you haven't seen that video, we released a video, my friend Carlos and I, way back about tier-based collecting. I'll put it in the description below. So if you want to see that system and see if it works for you, take a look at the video and see if you find anything that's enjoyable or likable or applicable to your own ways of collecting. But I do feel like it is a helpful strategy overall. overall. But generally speaking, tier 1 are characters that you absolutely love. Tier 2 characters are characters that are deemed critical to your collection by you, the collector. So when you're first starting out, the figures that are going to get you most excited and the figures that are going to keep you collecting are those characters. They have to be tier 1, tier 2 characters that you either absolutely love or that you've deemed as critical to your collection. Without that, those are going to be characters that eventually you get kind of sort of tired of. And then maybe you might move on from Hot Toys. You might move on to collecting something else or collecting nothing at all. And then that sort of is not good for the hobby because then you're in and out and you're moving on to different things. If you have longevity as a collector, I think this can really be a really good hobby for you and a healthy creative outlet for you to explore in terms of display options, love for the IPs and the characters, and just fun and community. There's so many good things about this community, but you have to stay in the hobby in order to engage in the community ongoing. Tier 1 and tier 2 characters are going to do that for you because they're going to get you the most excited. They're going to get you the most jazz when you walk into your collection. If you walk into your collection over time, those characters that don't fall into those categories are generally going to sort of get boring to you after a while. After a while, you're going to start to look at those characters and you're going to say, oh, I'm not really like, why do I have that again? How much did I pay for that? And that's where long term it starts to become problematic because as new things come out that you do start to fall in love with that you will deem tier 1 and tier 2 characters, over that time, you will start to sort of siphon out or filter out the tier 3 and beyond that. Some of your collection might be tier 3 depending upon how many figures you can fit in your collection. But long term, the tier 1 and the tier 2 characters are going to have the most staying power, the most longevity. So those are the ones that you really should be targeting first. Tip number 3 is to not restrict yourself to one line or IP unless you only care about one line or IP. And this is an idea that I've seen floated around by collectors quite often, quite frequently. And I've done it myself, even maybe earlier in my streaming career and in terms of my collecting career, right? I've said, okay, maybe it's good generally to stick to one line just because that gets you kind of started. It gives you a little bit of a focus and you don't get too overwhelmed with all the options and so forth. And that's a good idea in theory, but the problem is a lot of people like more than one thing. Most people don't eat the same thing for lunch and dinner every day, right? You like that variety. You like different things. Maybe you like different restaurants. Maybe you like cooking and preparing different things. Collecting should really be no different. Unless you only care about Star Wars, that's fine. If that's your choice and path of collecting, that's absolutely great. But if you like and love other IPs, then I think it's important to explore other areas that might interest you and get you excited about collecting. Because ultimately, we're here to have fun. This is meant to be an engaging hobby. You want to do it responsibly, of course, but at the end of the day, you're meant to have fun here. This is escapism and fun and joy. And that's what these figures should represent to you. So if there are characters that you love outside of Star Wars, putting those shackles on yourself, so to speak, and restraining yourself from enjoying other things that could bring you joy and bring you that escapism and fun and that childhood sense of adventure that you really collect in the first place for, or probably do, then I think that's important to explore other IPs due to that reason. But they have to be important to you. You don't want to buy just anything just because it's FOMO or it just looks good or maybe it sells out or maybe it might get expensive later. You got to really like it. Again, this comes back to the tier 1 and tier 2 thing. These got to be these are characters that are important to you. And without that, then it's really not going to have much staying power long term. But that said, if you restrict yourself to one line, it can become a little bit monotonous because you have a lot of similar characters. Say you only like Star Wars, you have a lot of clones, maybe you have a lot of Jedi or Sith or whatever, and over time those outfits and characters can start to blend and mix a little bit. Maybe you're in Marvel tends to have more colorful offerings, like they have a lot of different types of characters, but even then, a new Star Wars film comes out. Maybe you love it. Maybe you love The Mandalorian. Maybe you love the new Ahsoka show. Maybe you love, if they made any figures for Andor, maybe you would love Andor, right? Maybe something like that. Maybe you love Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, and those are huge childhood memories, but you're just a bigger Marvel fan. That doesn't mean you can't collect other figures and lines. I think it's important to explore your joy and see where that takes you, right? If you put that shackle and just cut off that road entirely, you're never really going to know what could have been. What could your collection look like? How much joy could it actually bring you if you really sort of just cut off one arm and you said, okay, I'm gonna just do things with one arm from now on, right? Like that's kind of how I view it. I think overall, you're kind of capping your joy by limiting yourself to one line. Maybe it gives you a little bit more focus in the beginning, but ultimately I think the downsides outweigh the positives here. Tip number 4 is try to avoid buying from Hong Kong resellers in the early stages unless it makes sense to do so. So those who are unfamiliar with Hong Kong resellers, essentially what they are is resellers who operate in Hong Kong who buy Hot Toys for the retail price in Hong Kong and then they sell it to collectors I would say primarily overseas. You might get a lot of European collectors or collectors from other places, United States even, people who want the figures a little bit faster. So if you're new to collecting, Hong Kong resellers generally historically have gotten the figures faster and can get them to you faster. However, Sideshow and other US retailers are adapting and getting the figures faster, which is fantastic, but a lot of collectors have at times been impatient and decided to go with Hong Kong resellers for any number of reasons. I bought from Hong Kong resellers before. Sometimes I just want the figure faster. Sideshow, other places are just taking too long. I get it. That kind of stuff happens. In the early stages though, I want you to not overcomplicate your life. Collecting can be something that can be really exciting and joyful, but it also can be stressful if you make the wrong decisions. And making the wrong decisions can sometimes include buying from a Hong Kong reseller. That isn't to say there aren't great Hong Kong resellers that are super reliable. Again, I've recommended 1/6 Kit many times. I love Kit. I think he's fantastic. He has great customer service, great options. If you have an issue, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get a replacement and thus a lot more stressful and maybe more likely to push you away from collecting than into collecting further, right? So that's why, generally speaking, if you're in the US, it's generally nice to get it from a place like Common Concepts or from, a Sideshow Collectibles, someone like that, where you can get a replacement relatively quickly and relatively easy, right? If you're in another country or another nation or wherever, continent, wherever you are, I understand it's not as easy. Sideshow Collectibles, I've heard, is a little bit more difficult for European collectors. You got import taxes and other, fees that are associated. So Hong Kong resellers generally make more sense for them. However, if that makes more sense, I think you should go for a Hong Kong reseller because it's better to have the figure than not. But if you're in other places where it makes more sense to go from a more official distributor, then I would say in that case, don't overcomplicate your life. That's something you need to think about. And in the early stages, I think it's important maybe to limit that risk until you know a little bit more about what's going on and what the actual benefits and downsides are of doing so. So for me, I would say be careful with this, and I would say go with something a little more official like Sideshow or Common Concepts. And just one final point on that, generally speaking, I've seen the prices honestly be better in the United States more often than not. Again, if you're not in the US, I totally get that. Hong Kong resellers might be the better option for you. There are other options out there like Pop Culture, who is in Australia, who have really good prices too. You can also order from them. So there are a lot of good options out there for collectors. I would say generally speaking though, don't overpay for a figure just to get it faster. It's gonna get to you pretty quickly. So I would say if you're patient, you will be able to get the figure for a much more reasonable price. The Hong Kong resellers obviously typically raise the price for day one batches because they know they're capitalizing on the impatient crowd and want the figure more quickly. So I think if you're willing to be patient, there's so many figures that are coming out. Save yourself a little bit of money, save yourself a little bit of stress, especially in the early stages. Go with something a little more legit. And finally, number 5, my golden rule, buy nice or buy twice. So what do I mean by this? Buy nice or buy twice essentially refers to the idea that you need to buy the best that you can reasonably afford the first go round. Because if you don't, what's going to happen, you're going to eventually get that figure. You'll say, oh, that's pretty cool actually. And then the better one comes out and you'll say, damn, I want that one more because that's a better figure. Hence the term buy nice or buy twice. If you had bought the nicest option available the first time, you probably wouldn't have had to buy twice. Sometimes this is unavoidable. Sometimes there is a character that you really, really love. And then the second film comes out and you're like, well, hot damn, I really love that second figure. I'm going to go ahead and sell the first one and get the second one. Sometimes again, it's unavoidable. You can't wait forever. As Kiko Collects likes to say, he doesn't like collecting pre-orders, right? He likes collecting figures. So if that's the case, then yeah, you got to go with what you love and you got to go when it's available, right? But don't just jump on something just because it's cheap. That's something that I really want people to kind of sink into their brain because there's so many opportunities to buy a Tusken Raider or like a Shore Trooper or something like that for really, really cheap. But do you really want that? Yes, it's a good deal, but do you really give a shit about that character? Because what's going to happen is when you need the space, eventually, that's going to be the first figure to go. And you might even take a loss on it for the deal that you thought you got. When you sell it, it might not even be worth that anymore. It'd be worth less than that. So you really got to factor in that the market fluctuates and changes, and there's a heavy oversaturation right now for anything that's been released in the last couple of years. That said, don't just go back and buy a previous version of a character just because it's cheap. If you want this other version of the character, that's the one you should go for. At the end of the day, you're going to be most happy with the thing that makes you the most happy. I think that's going to be really, really important. You got to look at the figure that really speaks to you the most, the version that speaks to you the most. Don't settle for the previous one. Don't settle for the one you don't really want. Get the one that you love, that you know you're going to feel good about, that you feel feel no reservation about. You know, the other ones you're going to feel over time, I'm not really feeling great about this. I think I might move on from it. Yeah, you're not going to want to do that. So at the end of the day, save yourself the time and the energy. Get the one that's really going to be important to you. Don't settle. And guys, that's it. That's 5 quick tips for hot toys purchasing. Of course, there's other things we can go into. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Feel free to stop in on any of our live streams. We have a live stream every Friday at 5:15 p.m. Eastern called Lights, Camera, Kiko Collect. It's always really, really fun. We have a lot of great guests on that one. And of course, we have pop-up live streams from here and there. I appear on other live streams here and there. Tons of content on this channel, reviews, like I said, tutorials, guides, anything you want to see. Drop a comment below. Like I said, I'll be happy to take a look at it and answer to it. Collection tours, I should be doing another one here soon. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you're a new Hot Toys collector, if you're an experienced Hot Toys collector and you have some tips for new collectors, feel free to drop them in the comments. Guys, if you're new, check out the comments below. See what sort of tips these experienced guys can offer you, guys and girls. The community is expanding quite rapidly, and I think it's pretty great. We have a lot of female collectors as well, which is really exciting. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That's all from me from now. So I can never say that correctly. That's all from me for now. It's such a tongue twister, dude. Anyway, guys, peace out. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Later. Bye.